Hello folks, welcome back. In this session, we are going to observe one of the very interesting Spring topics, that is Spring Data JPA. This technology helps us to interact with the database. We can say this is alternative to JDBC. Not only alternative, this is a simplified approach when compared to JDBC. Here, in order to develop a Spring application for Data JPA, I am creating a new Maven project and Maven project. Here I am not going to change anything in this couple of screens. Here Maven archetype quick start as very usual, and in the next screen let us give the artifact ID, that is the project name Spring Data JPA _01, and remove the project name from the package, then finish. This is fine. Now I got Spring Data JPA in my project explorer. I need to fix few configuration parts of the project. Let us go to POM. In this POM I need to have a couple of properties. They are build configuration and then the necessary dependencies. So here these dependencies, let us observe. Spring context, the version is 5.3.31, and then Data JPA, version is 2.7.18, and then Hibernate core, that is 5.6.15. then the remaining is JUnit, etc. Here we need to choose the versions of the dependencies based on the compatibility. And one more important point here, we need to choose Hibernate configuration, Hibernate core. Hibernate core is fine sufficient for exercising with the JPA. Why Hibernate is required here? Hibernate required here to perform JDBC operations. Along with these dependencies, another important dependency we need to have here, that is MySQL connector. MySQL connector of 8.0.33. These are the dependencies I have entered in my pom.xml file. After the pom file, another important configuration file required for this project, that is spring.xml. But before going to write the spring.xml file, make sure the project is updated in Maven. It is still showing Java SE 1.5, and here it is showing an error message, error marker. Now right click on the project, Maven, update project. Then it will fix the dependencies. It will fix the dependencies and also the Java compiler. Now it is done. We are good to go with the spring.xml file, where we are going to create that spring.xml file. Make sure it is in src main Java. Right click, new file. The file name is spring.xml. Otherwise, right click, new, other. Here you choose XML. The file name is spring.xml. Hit enter. Now in this spring.xml we need to have beans with all these properties. Here a couple of namespaces I have added. This is the default namespace, and this is context. This is for context, for annotation configuration, component scan, etc. And this is for JPA. These are for JPA. And the necessary namespace locations also you need to mention for every namespace you have added here. Now once these 6 are done, from here onwards the important configurations of Spring Data JPA will start. First we'll start with closing the beans, and then we'll continue. Multiple beans we are going to create here, spring beans. Just before we are going to create all the spring beans, few configurations we need to fix. Those configurations are context component scan. This component scan base package. The base package com.tutorial, and then context annotation config. This configuration kickstart the annotation configuration of the package, and Now with these two, so far we did not use, that is the JPA repositories base package. Base package of JPA repositories. These JPA repositories will understand on the go. So that is com.tutorial.repo. I am giving a repo here. This repo I am going to use further in the application. Once these basic configurations are done, now we are going to create many beans. They are all related to Spring Data JPA. Right. They are first bean. Class of the bean is driver manager data source is the driver class. Driver manager data source is the class name, but I did not remember the complete name of this class. That is fully qualified name of this class. So what I have to do here, go to any of the Java program, and in somewhere you type the program name, driver manager data source, you get the complete name. Now you get the import statement. From this import statement you can copy the fully qualified class name. This is the shortcut. This is the easy way to get the fully qualified class names of any of the class. Now it should have an ID, as we already practiced many times, that is data source. Okay, this ID, make sure you are giving exactly and perfectly data source, because the other beans depends on this, expects this bean as data source exactly. Now few more properties of the bean we need to configure. They are driver class name, and its value should be com.mysql.cj.jdbc.driver, one property, and another property. Yeah, here what is this data source exactly? It is encapsulating all the JDBC credentials: driver class, URL, username, password. Further, this driver manager data source is to be used by some other bean. Yeah. So these are the properties. This is URL, then username, password. So these are the common username passwords I am using across. Now one bean has completed, that is data source. Once this data source bean has completed, we can go to the other beans as well. Bean, right? This bean is class Hibernate JPA vendor adapter. The bean name is Hibernate JPA vendor adapter. How we got class full name last time? The similar way, let us try. Hibernate JPA vendor adapter. See, this import statement have complete the class name, fully qualified class name. Let us take this and paste it here in the class, and the ID is vendor. Now even this vendor is going to have a couple of properties. They are Hibernate properties, we can say. Their name is generate DDL. Its value is true. Here this can be a self-closing element, and then one more property, that is show SQL. This value also should be true. That's all. This Hibernate JPA vendor adapter class bean we have created successfully, and then one more class, that is one more bean we need to create. That bean class is local container. Local container directly will type in the Java program. Local container entity manager factory bean. This is. So again, let us take the fully qualified class name from the import statement and go to the spring.xml and paste here, and then the ID of the bean is entity manager factory. So let us split it into multiple lines to make it more visible. Entity manager factory, right? This entity manager factory, along with this entity manager factory, it should have one more attribute, that is p colon data source, p colon data source hyphen ref. That is the data source bean already we have defined earlier, that is data source. This data source is the one which we defined here. Okay, so this is the data source. After this data source ref, let us go to the child elements of this object. Their property name is JPA vendor adapter. JPA vendor adapter is one of the attribute, one of the properties of this entity manager factory. That is JPA vendor factory we defined here. Its ID is vendor. That vendor we are going to mention here as a reference vendor. And one more property. The property name is JPA properties. Here these are props, multiple props. They are prop, key and value pairs. They are here. These properties MySQL dialect. This MySQL dialect is, let us go back to Java program once again. MySQL 8 dialect. This dialect name also imported here. Let us copy paste. This dialect is responsible for converting all the JPA statements or JPA commands, or we can say methods, into database specific language. Hibernate.dialect, and its value should be the one which we copied from the Java program. Now another prop, the key is hibernate to .hbm to DDL. Hibernate mapping to DDL means automatically the database tables are created with the help of this property. This is another wonderful configuration here. As of now, first let us give create. Once after we executed this program, let us convert this to update. By the time of execution, we'll see so many details of this. One more property, props. JPA properties we have configured. Now once JPA property is configured, another property, that is packages to scan. This packages to scan is where you are keeping all entities, annotated entities. JPA related annotations are there. With those annotations we need to annotate the entity classes. Value is com.tutorial. Com.tutorial is the package name commonly we are using. Repo, where we are going to keep the repositories, and entity, where we are going to keep our entity classes. So almost configurations are done except one more. The last bean is here. JPA transaction manager is my next bean. So that bean JPA transaction manager. Yeah, JPA transaction manager. So this imports, from this import statement, let us capture the fully qualified class name that we will take in the bean class equals to, okay, what should be the ID? ID is transaction manager, and this transaction manager is going to have a property. The property name is entity manager factory, and its reference is entity manager factory. Here we defined entity manager factory. So this entity manager factory we are using as property of JPA transaction manager. This is all about the configurations. Once these two configurations are done, they are pom.xml and spring.xml, then finished, all configurations are done, we can go with the continuation part. Now, first thing we need to define an entity of which class object we are going to store into database table, and then repository. So these two things also we will continue. In com.tutorial.entity, and the class name is student. Now this student is going to have a couple of member variables. They are id, int id, string the name of the student, and another string the email address of the student. Now for this class, first let us generate all the constructors, setters, getters, and every necessary method here. Constructor from superclass, then constructor using fields, all fields, and setters, getters, finally toString. So these are the methods. Along with all these methods, we need to have one more method, that is using fields, constructor using fields, but except the primary key field value. The purpose of this method is, further we are not going to give any ID of the any entity we are going to insert into database table. JPA implementations itself creates the value for the primary key field. So that we will understand where we give the configuration. This class is to be annotated with the @entity, because this class objects are to be persisted. Entity we have in two places. They are in javax.persistency and hibernate. It is highly recommended to choose from javax.persistency. Once it is done, go to member variables. Here id, primary key field, a member variable which is representing primary key field in the database table. That field or member variable should be annotated with @id. This again id you have in two places. You choose from javax.persistency, and then how this id value is to be generated. Generated value, there are a couple of predefined strategies. You choose any of them. Here I am choosing auto. Generation type auto. That's all. This class is completed. Now the next step we need to go for interface. We need to define. This is not a class. The next step, what we are going to do, we are going to define an interface. When we are talking about interface, Java practitioners have to think a lot. What we are going to define in this interface, further where we are going to implement the interface. Let us observe that. Interface. The interface should be in a package called repo. Hope you remember some in the spring.xml file we mentioned repo, the same package we are taking, and the name of the interface. Usually the repo or repository interfaces will have a standard naming practice, that is entity name plus repo. So my entity name is the student and ends with repo, student repo, and this should be sub interface of JPA repo. It can be JPA repo or CRUD repo, but I am choosing JPA repository. So JPA repo, it takes two type parameters. They are T and ID. T is the entity class, which class objects we are going to further persist. We cannot type here straight away. The reason is here if you are typing, you don't get the fully qualified class name. So straight away you go to the source code of the interface. Here you mention student. Okay, now import statement generated, and then com.tutorial.entity.student id. What is the data type of the id field? That is int data type, but here you have to mention the class name, wrapper class name integer. Here what all we are going to define? As of now, we need not to define here anything. The reason is you defined a sub-interface of JPA repository. Everything required in this interface are there defined in JPA repository. We need not to define anything, right? What is the implementation? Again, we need not to implement anything. The predefined implementations comes and works here. All the CRUD operations are there here in the JPA repository. We are going to just use whatever CRUD operations the manufacturer has given. But the only thing we need to do here is annotation to this class. We have to annotate this as at repository. This is all finished. All CRUD operations we have. Now we need to define another class that is from business service package, business service. So service is the package name and the class name is student service. That's all. Here this class object is to be created by Spring Framework. We are not going to create any instance of this class. So annotate this class with at service. Now this class is going to have a member variable of student repo, that is our repository class, repository member variable, that is student repo. This object, we don't know the internal predefined implementation class of this interface, so we don't have any chance to instantiate. So what we are going to do, we're going to ask the Spring Framework to inject an instance of student repo into this student service class. So for that, what we can do, @auto-wired. What is this called? Private field injection. This private field injection is not at all a best practice, so remove this. But what we can do, yeah, we can define a setter method, generate getter setters. What all we need to have? Only set method, and then generate. Above this setter method, you give your auto-wired annotation. Finished. Okay, what all operations the business is expecting from this student or on this student object. As of now, I'm going to have only a single operation, that is save student. What is the operation? Save student. Okay, this method, let us say public is the access, and return type is the saved student, and then argument is again student which you want to save. Okay, now here you have a repository in your hand, that is student repo dot save. If you observed the signature of this save method is taking an entity of S type and returning again S type object. What is the purpose of this? What is the difference between the argument entity and the returning entity? That we will observe once after we entered into the application part. So student argument it is taking and then returning the saved student. Okay, let us observe this in the application. Where is the, this is app.java. Here let us remove the existing code and application context. Application context equals to new class path XML application context of string. That string is spring.xml. Now let us ask the context get a bean of the class student service dot class. So the return type will be student service. Now we will call the save student method of student service. In order to call student service save method, we need to provide a student object. So we will create a student object here. Student object equals to new student of Yeah, during the constructor invocation, make sure you have three constructors. One is no arg constructor, the other one is all arg constructor, and next all arg except the primary key field. Yeah, this is the recommended one which we are going to take. So name, what is the name? Name is Kishore. Email address is kishore@gmail.com. Yeah, this is simply an entity. Then who is going to give the ID value to this student object? ID value will be given by Spring Data JPA. Again, JPA means JPA implementation, that is from Hibernate it comes. So, right, when will it come? That let us observe. Student service dot save of student. As the result of calling this method, you get what is the return type of this method? Student. So you get student object. So student saved student. Okay. Let us observe what is there in the saved student. Sysout saved student is plus saved student. Yeah, before of saving also, let us print the student. Sysout before saving student. Now, if all the configurations are fine, we can execute the program and we'll see what is going to happen here. Here, before saving the student, its ID is 0, name is Kishore, email address is kishore@gmail.com, and then an ID has generated from Hibernate sequence. That ID has been used here. Okay, and then the student ID is 3, it is showing. Earlier maybe some other table depended on that sequence. That may be the reason it is showing ID is 3. Okay, now if you observed the database table, you can find the student data. MySQL -uroot -proot and then tutorial show tables. This is the student class we have, student table we have. So select star from student. See here, 3 Kishore. This is about Spring Data JPA. Along with this, we need to observe few more operations on the entity. As of now, we have only saved a single entity. After that, we need to retrieve, we need to edit, delete, etc. All other CRUD operations we need to perform. We'll see them in the continuation of this tutorial. Thank you for watching.